Connect with the Florida Star, the largest, oldest, and most read African American newspaper in Northeast Florida and Southeast Georgia. Claire McLaughlin is the publisher. And now, here's your host for the evening.
This is Opio, and I am sitting in for Claire McLaughlin here. You do not want to miss this show. We're going to talk about education. We're going to talk about race. We're going to talk about the prison system. And we got an expert on, a filmmaker on. We're going to do this. This is going to be big. But first, let me stress, before we get into the show, the importance of picking up the Florida Star newspaper. 1951. It's been around. A guy came into the office a couple of weeks ago and he said the reason he buys multiple copies of the paper is because he gives them away. The guy buys like 30 papers. He gives them away. He said it reminds him of his mother, his deceased mother. He said when he was a kid, his mother always told him to go out and get I think it's a milkshake and a Florida Star newspaper. This is back in the 60s. And I was just amazed by that story. The Florida Star. Make sure you pick up a copy. We're talking about the black press. And we're out there every week. We're a weekly paper. And you have to make sure that you spend money with black media, or else we won't be around. And then you will know the importance when we're not around. Florida Star newspaper. Make sure y'all pick that up now. Make sure y'all pick up the Florida Star. Always some great stories. And boy, Clara is on that Ebron case. She's been going to the courtrooms, and I mean, that's a big story. And we're still on that. And if you pick up the copy, we got the Moxie girl in there, the little girl that won with the one spark. And we got a nice picture and spread of that. Talk about the playground, the Eureka Garden, that Mona Lisa was helping the pastor there raise money. I mean, there's some really, really good stories in that paper. All right. Those of you who know me know that I teach as a professor. I teach criminology. And this semester I'm teaching a class called Race and Crime. Well, in this class, we ran into what was called the lease system. It's a prison lease system. And it was around here in Rayford where they were working people to death. They were working people to death. And that is the forerunner, and the chain gangs, those are the forerunner of today's private prison system. And those of you know there's a documentary and a news story that went out, talk about these two judges that were selling children to the private prisons. They were giving thousands of kids these sentences and long sentences, and they were getting kickbacks from people who owned a private prison. And they, two of them went to prison, one 28 years. One lady say that her son lost his life as a result of just going there when he did not even have to go there. And some of you also know that, particularly in the black community, they look at various things and you know who they're going to put in those private prisons. All you got to do is look at the reports. They're going to put black people and black bodies, and they're going to make sure they have a high occupancy rate, just like a hotel. You got people that make money off of us going to prison and make a lot of money. There is a documentary, part 2 of a documentary out called Elementary Genocide. Elementary Genocide 2. And I have the producer of that documentary on, award-winning documentary on right now, Brother Rahiem Shabazz. How you doing, brother?
Hey, how you doing, black man?
Man, brother, I'm just too happy to have you on. You have a couple posters, and trust me, I know how this works. You probably went through like 10 posters, and some of them you go, man, I wish people could see how tight that poster was. But you got one of them that has 2 kids on there, and then another one that has the one boy on there, the one I posted up. I love that poster. The brother is a young brother, almost remind you of a young Usher Raymond. He has a certain look on his face, but he also has this chain around his neck. And he looked like today's kid. In the background, you have barbed wire fence. You have the prison, what you would know as a prison. The guy has on these cool clothes, but also he has a prison number. Man, how did you come up with that concept right there as far as that artwork right there?
Well, I wanted, first of all, let me start by saying I appreciate you guys have show. That's foremost.
Yes, sir.
To answer your question, artwork that will resonate with the viewers as soon as they picked up the DVD and they seen it, they will question, what is this? And they will see that the message dealt with polarity. You see them in the school clothes and you see them in their jail uniform, because essentially that's what it is. It's from the schoolyard to the prison yard. And it starts with the education that's being taught to us at school and the zero tolerance laws and the way that we are subjugated in the criminal justice system, where blacks are deemed more criminal than whites, and for minor offense we are sent to prison, while those that are not, or those that are other ethnic groups, don't even receive minimal punishment. So that was the overall message I was trying to convey with that artwork.
Man, I don't want to steal your thunder because, man, we can go all day about these statistics. I want you to kind of talk about those things that you have in the film. How long did it take to make this film? Or is it part two because you had so much good information off of making part one, you able to make two parts? How did that go?
Absolutely. The first one, which is Elementary Genocide, the school to prison pipeline, is approximately 60 minutes. And there's so much information, but due to time constraint, I wasn't able to put it all in there. And as I'm making the film, I'm still doing more research. I'm finding out more things as they happen. And I was like, wow, there's a need for part two. And, this was my first time around the rodeo as far as documentary filming, and it was certain key things that I didn't put in there that I should have. For example, when we deal with the black woman, since 1930 until today, there has been an 800%, pardon me, 800% increase in incarceration, and I think that's something that we don't talk about. A lot of times from the media, from what we see, it looks like it's being that males are being affected, but females are also being affected. So that was something else. And also, the subject matter is the same, but it's an ongoing subject matter. And I think for us to really understand the situation, we had to go back to the beginning of where it all started. And it started with the Brown versus Board of Education, which a lot of people hailed as the landmark ruling and a watershed for African Americans. So I asked the proverbial question, did it do more harm than good? And I think I have a perfect lineup of individuals who are community activists, doctors, social scientists, and just regular folks that are on the speaking circuit that answer those questions.
There's a documentary I just heard. They were talking about integration. We were talking about St. Augustine and how really violently racist that place was. Civil rights movement. And this is really what you're talking about. You're talking about Brown v. Board of Education happened. Then right around that same time, you had Martin Luther King begin to go up, the civil rights movement go up. And then people had this thing in their mind about law and order. And this is where a lot of things changed and where the prison became the way to now deal with this new awakened black person. But also, it took Ronald Reagan to really skyrocket the prison system once he got in. Ronald Reagan, man, you want to talk about a person that's done some really, really harm to this country? Ronald Reagan. Now,
yes, Ronald Reagan with Reaganomics and the war on drugs. That was the epitome of what the mass incarceration was going to become. And it started with the laws, and they call it war on drugs, but it actually was a war on black people.
That's right.
And a lot of the rights that the civil rights had fought for, they was being rolled back during that time. And since then, things haven't got better, they got worse.
Right, and people, they almost kind of know that when we began talking about going to prison in the drug war that I'm going to say something bad about Bill Clinton. People just expect that out of me, so I'm just going to leave Bill Clinton alone, okay? But I want to talk about Malcolm X, because Malcolm X, he's right on what you got going on, what you have in your hands with this documentary. He say, well, if you don't know who you are, and we don't know who we are. And he talked about people getting a poor class education, and as a result of that, getting a poor job, and as a result of that, going into living in a poor neighborhood where they will get, again, poor education. I tell you what, we're about to go to a break, and when we come back, man, we got Brother Rahiem Shabazz on here. Documentary film, we're talking about Elementary Genocide 2. Y'all stay around.
The Florida Star. Do you know which media carries local, state, national, and international news regarding African Americans? The Florida Star. Do you know the only media that carries a special section for our youth at home and the schedule for 3 black television networks? Now you know the Florida Star. Northeast Florida's largest, oldest, and most read African-American newspaper, serving since 1951 in more than 200 locations. The Florida Star. News you can use. News you can trust. The people's choice. Striving to make a difference. Subscribe today. Call 766-8834. That's 766-8834. Pick up the Florida Star at over 200 locations, or to have it delivered, call 766-8834. The Florida Star. Speaking truth to power.
You're listening to Impact with the Florida Star, with your host, Clara McLaughlin.
And this is Opio Sokoni. I'm sitting in for Ms. Clara McLaughlin, the owner and publisher of the Florida Star newspaper. You are listening to Impact, and we're talking about, you're talking about the most important topics. We're talking about education, the prison system, and we're talking about our children. And on the phone, in the interview here, we have Brother Rahiem Shabazz, an award-winning documentary film, Elementary Genocide 2. How influenced are you by Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, those entities? Because I see on your Facebook page you sporting the red, black, and green. Tell me their influences on your thinking.
Oh, absolutely. When we dealing with influence as far as Marcus Garvey led a movement that has been unmatched today.
Right.
Marcus Garvey was able to galvanize people and get the people behind him, and he had a message and a platform that still resonates today. And when we deal with Malcolm X, he was a person that had dropped out of school and was able to self-educate himself and debate and win against Harvard lawyers and graduates. So these were men that were educated and mostly, for the most part, self-educated. And that's one of the things, we get an education that they give us, and we also have to have the education when we educate ourselves. And that's one of the messages that I try to get out to the public. The great literary genius, James Baldwin, he states, for all these are our children, we will all profit with or pay for what they believe. And once we realize the faith of our youth and that it affects everyone, then we have to organize and bring about change. And how we do that is by self-educating them. So those two, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, are people that I consider my heroes.
Man, and those people, they were, and are still today. You're talking about giants, absolute giants. Now, tell me some of the people that are in this film right here, because you got some luminaries in this film.
Absolutely. We have Dr. Umar Johnson. We also have Dr. Boyce Watkins. We have Jelani Kadesh. We have Kalanji Chenga. We have Daruba Ben Wahad. We also have Tracy Sasak, Cynthia McHenry, Sister Zaza Ali, another sister named Kalila Ali. We also have Francis Cress Wells, and the list goes on and on. I know I'm forgetting a couple of names. A brother by the name of Professor Ed Barnes. and even myself, I make a brief appearance in it. But one of the things I want to say, I know the documentary just came out, but I got a surprise.
You got Big Mike in there.
Yeah, Killer Mike.
Killer Mike.
Yeah, he's in the first one, you know. But I don't want to let the cat out the bag. For those that are in Jacksonville, Florida, this Friday at 6 p.m., you can actually view the documentary Elementary Genocide 2 at Masjid Al Salam, and that's at 1625 Pearl Street.
Oh man, you know our good brother over there. Yes sir. Right over there on Pearl Street. Now, what time is that again?
That's at 6 p.m. Friday. We haven't even filmed it in Atlanta yet, so y'all getting it first.
Man, yeah, you got our brother Umar over there. Yeah, yes sir. Imam Umar over there. Oh yes sir. Pearl Street. Y'all know the Pearl Street Mosque over there. Good brothers though. They always have the wonderful events. You know, Griff is always over there when he comes in town. That's where we go see Griff. So y'all make sure Friday at 6 o'clock. Go check that out. Man, I'm glad you said. I didn't even know. So that's a treat right there. And right on the phone right now, we got the brother who put this whole thing together. Talk about the process. There are a lot of people, they don't know this process. Tell me a little bit about what you went through. Talk about a little bit about sound, editing, organizing, writing it down. Talk a little bit about those things.
Okay, for the most part, one of the things that you have to do is you have to do extensive research. You have to know your subject matter back and forth. And you have to assemble the individuals that you want to interview, what questions you want to ask them. You got to have sometimes people that have opposing views. I'm sure everybody that I interview don't agree with everybody. But there's one main thing that we all can agree with, that mass incarceration, school-to-prison pipeline, and the current education system needs to be changed. And then once you do that, you may have 100, 150 hours of footage. So now your job is to try to get that down. You may get it down to 4 hours. Then you got to get it down to 2 hours, then an hour and a half. And you have to put it together seamlessly and tell a story. So that's where the editing process comes in. You have to have an opening. You have to have a middle, a high point. And then you have to always bring it home with a solution. And that's one of the things that I'm known for in my documentary, is always giving a solution to what the problem is. And I tell everybody all the time that this documentary is more than a documentary. It's a call to action. And I think that in itself says a lot about documentary filmmaking. And it's one of the reasons why I was just awarded Best Documentary at the Peachtree Village International Film Festival.
Man, now y'all heard what he said. Now, 100 to 150 hours that you get. You got all this stuff, and you got to ultimately come out with an hour, 2 hours worth of footage. 4 hours if you're going to do a sequel, and you got two hours. You know, and I'm talking about, you know how tough it is. You got all these luminaries that that he's dealt with to bring all this stuff together. You heard all the names he brought out, right? And then imagine all the things that you leave on the floor.
Absolutely. Another thing.
How tough is that, brother?
Yeah, I had a few people that just didn't make the cut, you know, and they're not in there at all. And I interviewed them, and you know, sometimes I get calls where a person might tell me, "You gotta have me in documentary, you gotta have me in documentary." I'll come through and I'll fill them, and they don't give me what I need.
Right.
You know, some people are good at their subject matter, but this is something that if you're not good at, I couldn't use them. You know, and then some people, I have them for other ideas.
Right.
Or I might use them for something else.
But guess what?
Overall, it was a good experience shooting it and getting everybody together.
But think about this though, Brother Rahiem. Now, back in the day, I remember when I first shot my first documentary, YouTube had just came out, you know, and nobody was thinking about doing any kind of series. Now, you can have a lot of that stuff on the floor, but you can take and create something where you can just kind of release anything and anytime you want to release as a part of you just releasing stuff, and it only take a few minutes, you know what I mean? And so that's a benefit, you know, particularly when you look at all that footage that you leave on the editing floor, you know?
Absolutely. And I plan on doing that. I plan on releasing some of it to YouTube and different things like that, because the message is definitely pertinent. And, you know, like I said, whenever you're doing documentaries, you're going to have a time constraint. So we couldn't get it all in there, and that's what makes a good editor, because everything looks good to me.
Right.
And you have to, you know, detach yourself from it.
Right.
And just be like, well, what would they want to hear? You know, how important is this message from this message? And, you know, we gave the undisputed truth. We didn't sugarcoat nothing. And, you know, like I said, everybody's not going to agree with it.
Right.
The majority all agree with it.
Man.
But the truth is undisputable.
Let's talk about something deeper. The narrative of Frederick Douglass, he talked about how vicious some whites were when it came to teaching black people how to read, how they were vicious about it. Why? Why so vicious, Brother Rahiem?
I'm not sure I'm understanding your question. You said
the black man and woman
not to read.
To not educate and make sure that they did not read, those blacks did not read who were enslaved. It was so important that they were vicious against those that they found reading, right? And we know that Frederick Douglass, he said, well, one of the reasons is because if you read, you can begin to articulate yourself. And if you articulate yourself, you can articulate freedom. And once you articulate freedom, you can no longer be an enslaved person.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to what Carter G. Woodson said. He said if you control a person's thinking, you don't have to worry about their behavior.
Man.
And when you educate it, they can't control your thinking. And that's one of the things about us. Our thinking is controlled by Europeans who do not teach the most genius perspective that resonates within the Afrocentric framework. And once we taught the Afrocentric framework, then we come into ourselves. And that makes us whole, and that makes us courageous, and that makes us speak out. And that's that warrior spirit that they don't want out.
That's
right.
They
want us docile. And, you know, when things happen, they want us to pray, you know. But when you're an educated man, you know, you say the hell with praying. You know, you can pray sometimes, but sometimes, you know, you got to fight fire with fire. And they don't want that. So that's why, you know, in school, rich children get taught, poor children get taught.
Now, your subline here from Elementary Genocide 2 is the Board of Education versus the Board of Incarceration. Talk about that.
The Board of Education is essentially in cahoots with the prison system. And, you know, I put first is because you're looking at the power level. And when you go into the school system, the first thing that happens before the 8 o'clock bell rings is you see a resource officer. They have you go through a metal detector. You have to walk in a straight line to class. This is the same thing that happens in the prison. Even when you go visit a prisoner in a prison, the first thing you see is a correction officer, and then you see a metal detector. So what the school system does is prepare you and controls you in order so that you can operate and function in that prison system where eventually you're going to end up. If you're not reading on grade level, which is the 3rd or 4th grade, they're able to track and determine how many prisons they need to build in the next 10 to 15 years. But statistically, 75% of those who do not read is going to end up in jail. So that's why reading is fundamental, and they do not want us to read because with reading is empowering us.
Man. And brother, if they want to find out more about, is there a website? Is there somewhere else they can go to find out more about your documentary?
Absolutely. You can go to elementarygenocide.com. You can also hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and that's at Rahiem Shabazz.
All right, Brother Rahiem, I appreciate everything, brother.
All right, I appreciate that. And everybody in the Jackson, Florida area, make sure you go out to Masjid Al-Salam, 1625 Pearl Street, Jacksonville, Florida. And what I'm told, this is going to be a free event. So I expect it to be packed. You want to get there early, and the time is at 6 p.m. this Friday.
Man, all right. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, brother.
Man, look how important that is. We're talking about something that so many of you who are listening to this are experiencing right now. You wonder why your kid keep getting in trouble, in these schools. Well, they got private schools that there are kids that are worse than your kid. You name how bad your kid is. There are kids that are worse than that, but they figure out creative ways to make sure that child can still get the education while they're being bad. It's just how private schools are. And particularly when they have certain types of programs that's going to fit what your child is. There are various institutions that are private that are like that these days. And so it's so important for us to make sure that the public school system is being more creative and thinking outside the box and getting the job done, right? All right, I have to get out of here, but make sure you guys pick up a copy of the Florida Star newspaper. Got some great stories in there, and it's going up to $1. Finally, it is going up to $1. So make sure you support black media. Where else are you going to go and you're going to get such deep talk? Right here in Impact, sponsored by the Florida Star newspaper. This is Opio, and I will see you next time. Peace and love to you.